Hello, my name is Alex Isles and welcome to Newcastle's castle, more specifically the South Postern Gate. What I'm going to do in this video is take you around some of the southern parts of Newcastle's castle and tell you some of the stories of the surrounding area around here. Now, to start off, the Postern Gate. A Postern Gate is a side entrance to the castle. Newcastle's castle had two main gates. One, the West Gate, which now has become the area of Westgate Road leading up out to the west of the city, and then also the Black Gate, which is much more famous and can be seen as a structure that still survives to this day. The West Gate has been demolished and no longer exists. But there were two postern gates as well. There was the South Gate, or South Postern right here, and the Eastern Postern, which connects onto a street called Dogleap Stairs. Now, this South Postern probably had an earlier gate right next to it, so you can see a gatehouse right here that has been bricked up and filled in over time, but then it's been replaced by the modern one that you can see here. There's a local historian called John Grundy, who's quite famous in the northeast of England, who also theorizes that Roman gatehouses had this double arched structure and style, and this could be the remnants or a reimagining of the gatehouse of Ponus Alius, the Roman fort. I'm less certain of this because this looks very medieval, so I think it's an early medieval construction of a gate that's been bricked up and filled in and then replaced with the current entrance right here. You can also see remnants of the walls of Newcastle's castle going along in this direction as well. Down here, there are the set of steps that would take you down to Newcastle's quayside. So Newcastle's quayside was a bustling, amazing trade centre where goods from all over Europe would come into Newcastle, and then goods from Newcastle would go out. During the Middle Ages, Newcastle's main exports were things like animal furs, wool, and alongside that, shipping goods. Later on, that was obviously replaced with the famous coal from Newcastle and how Newcastle became a massive industrial centre in Europe and around the whole world. But the quayside was very important for supplying the castle with all of the goods it would require and keeping the garrison supplied in case of warfare, which again, as Newcastle was a mustering point for the army during many wars with Scotland, was highly important. Coming up through here, we're now going through the postern and we'll see some of the buildings and the ruins around here as well. So now when we've come through the postern, you can actually see the ruins of the walls of the castle right here, and alongside that as well, a well. That would be right there as well. Directly in front of me, you can also see another wall. There's a chance that this would go straight into the castle keep. It's been theorized that there was a north and a south bailey. So a bailey is a distinction between two parts of the castle, and that wall would have come up and entered into the castle, breaking up the garth, or the enclosure, which is garth is an Old English word meaning enclosure, and breaking up so there would be two parts of this area of the castle. Now right here we have the Moot Hall, which is a court, and today this still functions as a family court here in Newcastle. But this was built in 1812. It was relatively modern for many of the historical buildings that you can see in and around the castle today. When this was built, they demolished previous structures on this site, and there's actually quite a rich area on the site where the Moot Hall is today. In the past, we think that this is where the Motte and Bailey Castle originally was built. So a Motte and Bailey Castle is a mound, so that's the motte, and then a bailey is a wooden tower. So you would have the Motte and Bailey Castle that was built in 1080 right here on this site. What caused for the building of Newcastle's castle was the murder of a Bishop of Durham across in Gateshead. When that happened, William the Conqueror sent his son, Robert Curthose, up to the north bank of the River Tyne to build him a brand new castle. And so they took the contours of the land and they built up a mound, and then on top of that mound they built a wooden tower, and then had wooden walls built around this area of the Castle Garth, all the way around what we would consider the castle area today. That castle survived a while until the reign of Henry II, who wanted to defend his new kingdom that he had gained. And so Henry II sent an engineer up here called Maurice the Engineer to build Newcastle's castle from 1167 to 1177. So the Motte and Bailey by that time had probably burnt down or been destroyed. We have records of a fire here. So because of that, the Motte and Bailey is destroyed and it's replaced by the new castle, which gave it the city its name. Alongside that, they built the Great Hall on this site. And the Great Hall, many people think of it as the main hall inside the castle, but that would have been a judicial site, a place of royal power. Here, the Great Hall in front of me, where the Moot Hall is today, would have been a place of banquets and feasting and entertaining. The ground level had kitchens and storerooms built into it, and a wine cellar as well, where wine would have been brought up from the quayside, probably from France, to actually entertain the people who were inside the great banqueting venue. And above it, there would have been a great hall where there would have been tables and chairs and feasting and drinking and fresh food brought up from the kitchens below. And so it's very much that image of the medieval banqueting hall that would have been on the Great Hall on this site. Now, on the other side, where the previous Motte and Bailey Castle had been, they also built something called the Queen's Mantle. Now, I have to give some context for this, because when the Normans were building castles, they actually had, for a very short period of time, a very specific design of castle that never really took on, took on throughout the whole of Europe. And this was a round castle which would have high walls, and then on the inside there would be an open space. And when you had this open space in the middle of the castle, there were buildings built into the walls. Here at Newcastle's castle, there would have been the Queen's Mantle, which was a half-circle shape, and there were buildings built into the Queen's Mantle, and it was probably the sort of important industries needed to maintain the garrison and the keep. They were built into those things as well, supply depots, maybe a blacksmith's, things like that. But you have the Queen's Mantle, which was a defensive position coming out in a half-circle shape over the top of the river as well. Later on, that is then upgraded to become a different defensive position altogether. It's called the Half Moon Bastion, and that is then filled with cannons, and during the English Civil War is used to defend Newcastle's castle and the area around here against the parliamentarians, because Newcastle's castle was taken over by the royalists, Gateshead was occupied by the parliamentarians, and there was quite a strong fight between both sides. So the Queen's Mantle evolved into the Half Moon Bastion, and cannons were fired from there down onto the Gateshead side to keep this side in royalist hands. Turning around here, you can see the castle keep itself, obviously the great defensive tower in the heart of the castle area itself, and that is what we generally think of as a castle, but there are so many other buildings inside this area as well. The walls would have then gone around the Great Hall, through this location here, through where the Vermont Hotel is today, and around to the other side to join the Black Gate. So you can see this is